Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and there's still a little bit of time until we can start discussing the Thrones of Decay DLC contents. However, as you can imagine by my video output recently and the sheer amount of streams I've been doing, I want to talk about Update 5.0, which is not attached to the DLC. In that sense, you won't be paying for the update that will come naturally to you for free on the 30th, which is the release day. Now generally I don't talk about the patches, but I feel like it's quite important to talk about this one specifically because there has been a radical change from, well, comparison of 4.0, for example. I know some people are sick of hearing about Shadows of Change, but it is important to refer to previous updates when it comes to comparison measures, because it is something that is quite frequent here. You know, we get a lot of updates when it comes to this game. So, when it came to the previous stuff, we weren't really getting as many updates. The updates actually looked smaller. Now, they weren't really small by any stretch of the word, it's just a lot of the time for the update was spent on multiplayer balancing because that seems to be a priority for some reason. However, in this update we have seen a bunch of multiplayer changes, but a very big shift in campaign changes. This is why a lot of people are generally quite happy, because for the first time in a while we're seeing a patch which promised major reworks granting major reworks. Not only that, but there were basically 3 major sets of reworks. Nurgle finally got the quality of life update that was desperately needed. Sure, it wasn't as big, but we do have to take note that a bunch of core mechanics were basically rewritten from the ground up. The plague system, for example, that one is a big one. Changing some of the buildings to no longer be cyclical anymore, so they are actually a bit more viable to use. A proper economy, which in about 100 turns had granted me all of Nagorov, the Northern Chaos Waste, Orphan, and I was pushing into the Empire, Kislev, Bretonia, and Lustria simultaneously, which is impressive to see a core base game faction and race in general, which were feeling pretty lackluster in all honesty, despite being some of the most unique styles that we've seen for Total War Warhammer finally becoming viable. I rank Nurgle up pretty high now. The introduction of Epidemius is quite interesting because first up, again, proof that the legendary lords for free are usually better than the legendary heroes because people love to play with factions. While legendary heroes are very, very cool, don't get me wrong, I feel like they're better served in DLCs or the random sporadic one every now and then, but having a brand new faction of a race which is very underrepresented does allow for a lot more replayability. It also shows that Epidemius didn't need his own massive unique mechanic. If you notice, the tally stuff is pretty much just based on what you already have vanilla. It just expands on it, but yeah, this kind of helps out because there's a lot of people who think that mechanics should be completely new and make the faction very different to the other ones in the specific race. But yeah, I feel like Epidemius introduces a different type of play while still being the same base mechanics. Hopefully Creative Assembly are taking notes for the reception here of Epidemius, because there are a bunch of other races and factions which could do with legendary lords for free to fill out the blank roster a little bit. Obviously we have to look towards other monogod factions which are currently lacking legendary lords, and there's a bunch of characters in general with races that are pretty much complete that could do with another character here and there just to give you more start positions and have a little bit more fun with it. As a basic example, I don't imagine that we'll get another DLC for the Vampire Coast or the Tomb Kings. Both of them, well, the Tomb Kings are pretty much done barring like 1 or 2 units, and well, the Vampire Coast never had an army book. They were a collaboration with Games Workshop. Unless there's an army book hiding somewhere, I wouldn't mind just adding in another character which is missing, giving them a little bit of different flavor, and there you go, right? Just have a little bit of fun with that. It's also quite nice that we finally saw the re-implementation of mega map only characters. Epidemius being only available for the Immortal Empires map, I would say adds to a little bit more of the coolness factor. The Realm of Chaos map is very, very small, and when you're playing with a character like Epidemius who is trying to spread plagues across the world, you want to focus on the big map. I'm not going to shit on the Realm of Chaos map, I don't like it personally, but I feel like the bigger, grander scale, the better. It must have also cut some development time because that means that they don't have to make sure that everything's working on 2 maps too, thus making it a little bit easier. The Empire getting some major changes while the race itself didn't really get a lot of updates. We saw both Balthazar Gelt and the Emperor Karl Franz getting major overhauls. They now have their own feeling like if they're DLC characters, and this is something that really should be highlighted, mostly because Creative Assembly had gone on record saying saying that they didn't want base game lords to actually be too unique because it would ruin the whole introduction to the certain race and factions. Obviously, Franz is very much vanilla still, but he has his own unique mechanic attached to that, which kind of enhances the feel. And Gelt, I mean, new start position, new mechanic in general, it makes him feel a lot more interesting, despite the fact that he was already interesting to begin with. And naturally, we can't forget about the Dwarfs. You see, the Dwarfs have had a number of reworks over the years. They had 2 of them, actually, in Warhammer 2, and it made them better, but just not perfect. Every time they got a little closer to what everyone was expecting, but it still felt a little bit lackluster. I feel now that the Dwarfs have had a change to the Grudge system and also the really much needed change to the technology tree, alongside finally having in a way to travel through the Kara's Anchor, teleporting through all the Dwarf locations much quicker. It's going to make the Dwarfs a lot more enjoyable. I've been having fun with the Dwarfs, and this is without using the Thrones of Decay stuff. I feel like if a patch like this dropped without a DLC, it would have been received just as well as it's currently being received. And that's a big thing. Sure, there's a few things that I feel are missing here. Like, for example, it would have been great if Clan Pestilence with Lord Scroke got access to the new Plague mechanics, because, I mean, it just kind of makes sense. But it's definitely showcasing that Creative Assembly have always been able to do something a little bit bigger and more fantastic. We have to take into account naturally here that, yes, they have taken a lot more time to get this DLC out, as we were expecting this in December last year, and if it would have come there, the patch would have been a lot smaller. So I do believe that if they do kind of increase the speed at which they release DLCs, you know, not once every 8 months as it's been the common occurrence, maybe we won't get patches this big. However, a fraction of the size would still be better because it's showcasing that, yes, they are aware of major issues coming here and there. I do feel like it's very important to note that we shouldn't really expect patches this large all the time, because I imagine that they managed to get this done, again, because of the increased time that they had, and to be fair, the 3 races in this DLC were in desperate needs of touch-ups, and if they would have not done it like what happened with Shadows of Change, they would have been cannibalized. However, and I'm speaking directly to Creative Assembly here if you're listening, which you usually are, when it comes to updates, it's pretty much expected now that they should be a little bit better. They don't have to be this size, but it would be nice if, say, for example, on the 0.1 patches, which usually drop 1.5 to 2 months after, or 3 months depending, it would be nice if those had some minor changes here and there. Campaign updates to fix up some characters here and there that might not get a DLC, or might not get a DLC until very down the line, but you feel, well, we could do this now and fix this and get it out of the way. A little addition to Malekith, just to make him a little bit more different. A little addition to, well, Scroke would be great. I'm going to keep repeating that until the end of the series if he doesn't get sorted, but yep, I'd love to see him have the Plague mechanic. The big thing is a lot of people have major expectations for this game, even despite the major issues that we've had for pretty much since launch. And there's still a little bit of hope there, especially if patches end up being this good or a little smaller but more frequent, and thus bringing quality of life updates to a lot of factions which, let's be honest, desperately need it. Again, I feel a little bit more confident with this patch, and I feel like if we can get something similar or split up into the 2 different patches between each DLC cycle, it would probably be the best thing for the game. Let's hope things continue like this. I do get a little bit worried because we have had ups and downs, but I'm generally looking at things a bit more confident. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I know patch discussions aren't really the most exciting thing, but I really wanted to talk about it today. We'll be back on Tuesday. I am taking Monday off to rest my voice a little bit. So on Tuesday, we'll be able to talk quite heavily regarding everything to do with Thrones of Decay. And on the 29th, you can see my review regarding that DLC. The videos are done, so I think I've earned myself a bit of a rest. Have a good day, everyone, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.